Another day with an early lock time in daily fantasy baseball, and this time, instead of a 9-game slate, it is a 4-gamer. There were supposed to be more for today, but with bad weather pretty much all across the globe, it seems like a lot of those games were postponed. So just a 4-game main slate for today would lock at 1:10 p.m. Eastern. We're going to break down this slate because despite the fact it is just 4 games, we get Coors Field for the first time in 2023. We'll talk about what that means, where we're going there, and our favorite pitching options for Thursday on FanDuel. Welcome on into the solo shot. That's right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and numberFire.com. My name is Jim Saunas. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberFire, here to dissect this 4-game main slate with locks up for 1:10 p.m. Eastern for today. I would give out weather notes, but again, just 4 games, and all of them that had weather were postponed. Every game remaining of the 4 games has low temperatures. So the temperatures between about 48 and 56 degrees or so, which means we don't need to adjust for weather because everywhere is cold. So definitely you want to keep that in mind, specifically with Coors, because it's not typical Coors, because it's not, 70 degrees or whatever in Denver, but it is still the same temperature as everywhere else. So the relative upsides of Coors are still there. So to me, I think that's impactful. I think that lowers a lot of my concerns around Coors Field for today. I think we feel pretty good about it being full Coors relative to the slate, if it's not full Coors relative to itself. We'll talk about what that means, talk about pitchers and more in just 1 second. But first, a reminder to make sure you are subscribed to the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts. We have NBA covered, MLB, UFC, PGA, all in the same place. So search for the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed to get this podcast as it goes live each and every weekday. And while you're there, if you like what you hear, leave us a 5-star rating as well. Grand slams, no hitters, and double plays are back, and there is no better place to get in FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. That's because right now, new customers can step up to the plate with a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. Sign up, place your first bet, and get up to $1,000 back in bonus bets if you don't win. So don't miss your chance to get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 when you join FanDuel today. FanDuel, official partner of Major League Baseball. Must be 21 plus and present in select states. First online real money wager only. $10 deposit required. Refund issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire in 14 days. Restrictions apply. See full terms at FanDuel.com/sportsbook. FanDuel is offering online sports wagering in Kansas under an agreement with Kansas Star Casino, LLC. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit FanDuel.com/RG. In Arizona, 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT-STEP to 53342. In Connecticut, 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat. In Indiana, 1-800-9-WIN-IT. In Wyoming and Kansas, 1-800-522-4700. Or in Kansas, ksgamblinghelp.com. In Louisiana, 1-877-770-STOP. In Maryland, mdgamblinghelp.org. In New York, 1-877-8-OPEN-Y or text OPEN-Y. And in West Virginia, go to 1-800-GAMBLER.net. Pitching preview for this Thursday slate is a short one because not a lot of pitchers to be had. Kevin Gausman comes in with the highest salary at 10.8. We got Lance Lynn at 97. Chris Sale in his second start back is 9,000. Alex Wood, 84. Kyle Freeland, 82, as the guys above $8,000. And when you look at this slate and you hear those names, given where Sale's at right now, I feel like it should be pretty clear that Kevin Gausman is the top guy. And I'd agree with that wholeheartedly. So Kevin Gausman is our #1 pitcher for tonight in daily fantasy. Now, Gausman is on the road, but that did not bother him last year. He actually had better results on the road than at home. His strikeout rate went up 1.7 percentage points, and that's not something we should expect to stick. Over the long run, we should expect all pitchers to be worse on the road than they are at home because that's the way things work. But it does mean to me we don't need to downgrade Gausman much being on the road. He's facing the Royals here, who are a lower strikeout team than some others, but I also think that they're a higher strikeout team than what the Royals have been in the past. And that's an important note because a lot of times the Royals have been targets for cash games in DFS because they were not the best offense, but they were a tougher tournament team because they didn't strike out a whole lot. That's no longer the case. They're at a 23% strikeout rate versus righties, over the since the start of last year, based on the current active roster. Their 85 WRC plus is worst on the slate. Gausman is also stretched out. He went 90 pitches in his first start and looked very good. He had 7 strikeouts in 6 innings against a very good St. Louis Cardinals offense. We didn't see a lot of splitters from Gausman in that game, which you can see happen with guys that throw splitters. They'll work their way up throughout the year to not, tear their fingers apart. But we saw that adjustment last year too, where Gausman scaled back on his splitter over his final 18 starts. Even in that time with fewer splitters, his skill interactive ERA was 2.84. He had a 30% strikeout rate with a 4% walk rate. So there were some rough individual starts in there, but the overall sample was very, very good. And I don't think anybody else is in his tier. So I have Gausman projected almost a full strikeout above everybody else. I agree with that. I think that is the way to be. I think he is the definitive top option. And if you want to stack Coors Field, you can get to Kevin Gausman for today. And I would very much like to do so. Lance Lynn is one of the guys that then a strikeout of Gausman, and he's at home. So you can justify him as a pivot, but he's not in Gausman's tier. He is a pivot, but not in the same tier. And I want to make that very, very clear. If you don't want to deviate a full tier to pivot, fine. Then I think you stick with Gausman. That's probably what I'll do. But if you think that a full tier off is okay, then Lynn is within that consideration. Lynn's facing the Giants. Not a great matchup for a righty. They have a 107 WRC plus versus righties. They're about average in terms of strikeouts. So being here is a product of a 4-game slate. Lynn should, though, go deep in the game. He went 96 pitches his first start. He used to be this massive horse, and maybe still is, but and that 96 pitch outing came against Houston. He got 6 strikeouts there, which is pretty impressive, even in their lineup being, somewhat reduced from what it has been. That's very impressive. Lynn's been mixing in his slider a bit more across his past 13 starts. It's around 10% usage, so not a huge pitch for him, but it's been good to him. 25% strikeout rate in that time, 4% walk rate. The batted ball profile is not elite for Lynn in this time, but it's just 48 degrees in Chicago, so that should help keep things in the yard even if he does make a couple of mistakes. I have Lynn projected at 6.6 strikeouts, which ranks second behind Gausman. So if your goal is to avoid the chalk, I would go to Lynn, but Lynn will also carry a lot of popularity as a result of just being a small slate. So I think it's really Gausman to me, Lynn, if you really want to deviate there. I think if I'm saying I definitively must get off Kevin Gausman, I might prefer the other side of the Lance Lynn game as the preferred pivot. And that guy is Alex Wood, our final pitcher at $8,400. It's a very tough matchup, which should keep people off of him, I would guess. The White Sox have a 123 WRC plus against lefties since the start of last year, with just an 18% strikeout rate. We do not want to use guys in the spot. But there are only 2 guys above him in Lynn and Gausman. They could always go kaput, and Wood is stretched out. Despite this being his first start of the year, he went 97 pitches in his final start during the spring. So Alex Wood is ready to rock. He is coming off a down year as far as the results go, 5.10 ERA, but the peripherals were better with a 4.00 expected ERA, 24% strikeout rates. We did see Wood cut back on his sinkers a bit as the year went along, and in that time, he had a 3.45 skill interactive ERA, 24% strikeout rate, and a 5% walk rate. The batted ball numbers in that sample, not as good as they were for the full season, which is slightly concerning, but again, not a great slate. It was between Wood and Chris Sale for this slot, and I don't think Sale is going longer than 80 pitches for a while, so it kind of had to be Wood. So I'll go Alex Wood here. We'll talk about Sale and things to watch, but I think that Alex Wood deserves to be number 3 and probably my preferred pivot off of Gausman, just because I know Lynn will also likely catch a lot of popularity for today. Let's talk about stacks for today, and the easiest decision on this slate, maybe even up there with Gausman, maybe even above Gausman, is to stack Coors Field. I am fine with it. Again, low temperatures at Coors, so it's not full Coors Field, but the relative weight of Coors is still there because every other game is also chilly. We'll start here with the Rockies, who are my preferred side of this game. They're facing Josiah Gray, who is a guy whose upside I do like long-term because he can get some strikeouts, but he's not getting them right now, and everything else is kind of a little bit scary. Gray lets up a ton of fly balls, and he's not getting enough strikeouts now to offset all those fly balls. We have seen Gray trying to combat this. He has been adding a sinker in to help with the batted ball issues. It's a 9-start sample with that sinker being in the mix, but it hasn't helped much. In that time, Gray has a 43% fly ball rate allowed, which is a 17% strikeout rate. His ERA is 5.66. In his 2023 debut last week, let up 3 home runs against the Braves. That's a tough team for sure. But now you go from facing the Braves, very tough offense, to pitching at Coors Field. Good luck. The Rockies are not the Braves by any means. 90 WRC plus against righties, but again, it's Coors. That helps a ton. So I do think we want to be here and be pretty aggressive in doing so with the Rockies at the top of our stacking pool. We do want to favor the lefties against Gray. Since the start of last year, they have a 603 slugging percentage against Gray. That's bananas. Righties are at 427. So don't ignore the righties. They're still fine here at Coors, but I would give the lefties a decent boost. That means Jerks and Profar, Charlie Blackmon, Ryan McMahon. McMahon and Profar are both willing to run, which is a huge benefit because Coors Field's not just for home runs. It's also a huge outfield, which means more balls in play fall in, which means more guys getting singles, which means more guys getting stolen base opportunities. That's good for McMahon and Profar. So I like that a lot for them. They're going to be my top 2 guys above Blackmon for today, and they both have enough power too. So I think McMahon and Profar are going to be the 2 building blocks for me at hitter on this slate. Other side of this game is the Nationals. They're facing Kyle Freeland, who is used to pitching at Coors Field, but he struggled quite a bit here last year. His ERA was 6.00. His strikeout rate went down at home. His hard hit rate went up. And like Gray, we've seen Freeland using more sinkers to try to help keep things more in check. But in that time, with more sinkers, we've seen Freeland let up a 44% hard hit rate with a 40% fly ball rate. His skill interactive ERA is 4.63. We did see Freeland pitch great in his debut with 6 shutout innings against the Padres, and there were some changes to his repertoire in that start, so maybe Freeland does turn things around going forward. But in that game, just 1 strikeout, 53% fly ball rate, and now you put him back at Coors Field, that could bring him back down to earth. So I'm very good at the Nats here. Think that they make a lot of sense. They're not the most exciting overall offense, but I think they have some cool individuals. Joey Meneses gets a platoon advantage here against a lefty. Lane Thomas hits lefties well. Stone Garrett's got some power. If he starts for the second straight day. Victor Robles, pretty good spring with a little bit of power and great plate discipline to open this year. So, they've got some guys. I'm not trying to oversell them because they're still the Nationals in their current state, but I think that they work pretty well for today. So the Rockies and Nationals, the top 2 stacks, of course, Field prefer the Rockies, but will be on the Nationals as well. Other stack for today is the Blue Jays. They're facing Jordan Lyles, and I think I would say that Lyles has outperformed expectations personally if I were to grade relative to consensus. But Lyles is still a guy we can stack against here. In his first start this year, he did fine. He went 5 1/3 innings, let up 2 runs, with one of those being earned, but also let up a 47% hard hit rate with a lot of fly balls. It's part of a shift in approach that Lyles has had dating back to last year. He's done that for his past 9 starts, where he's throwing fewer sinkers and more forcing fastballs, likely trying to get more strikeouts, I would guess, but it's hurt his batted ball issues, or hurt his batted ball profile. The results in the time have been fine with a 3.99 ERA, so I would expect him to stick with it, but his skill interactive ERA, 4.46. He has a 16% strikeout rate in that time, which is the lowest on this slate. And he's not walking a lot of guys, which means he's letting up a ton of balls in play. The Jays can smack righties. They have a 118 WRC plus versus righties, a 176 ISO, which is best on the slate. So I think we can feel good here. I don't feel as good about the Jays as I do about Coors Field, but I feel good enough where it is in the pivot discussion if you want to deviate from stacking Coors for today. As far as platoon splits go, Lyles is not heavy one way or another, so he does get fewer ground balls versus lefties, so I would lean that way, but he's not good enough against righties where I'm bailing on them. That's good because the Jays have a lot of righties. The one lefty they've got, who I love, is Dalton Varsho, $3,500. I want to be heavy on Varsho today as a one-off if I can get there at 35. He had 2 scorched balls yesterday. One was a home run, one was a line out, but he just murdered that one. He has power. He will steal. He's batting fourth. I would love Varsho to be a focal point of a one-off, focal point one-off for me around my Coors Field stacks. If I can get there, maybe not as far as salary goes with Gausman being my pitcher, but I do love Dalton Varsho for today. Let's move to things to watch now. We've not talked about two pitchers. Both of them are in the Red Sox-Tigers game, so let's talk about both of them right now. First one is Chris Sale. He went 3 innings in his debut, re-debut, his 2023 debut, 74 pitches. He let up 7 earned runs and 3 homers, but did have 6 strikeouts with a 17.6% swing and strike rate. He let up a ton of hard contact. 70% of the balls in play against him were hard hit. So you could maybe stack the Tigers against him if you want to. I'm not opposed to that. It's a small slate and he struggled, but I'll put him below the Jays here. I want to see Sale's second start to see if he improves because I love Chris Sale from a pitching perspective. I'd love to be back on him at some point, but not right now. Not even on this slate. Can't get there based on how things looked in that first one. The only other pitcher is Spencer Turnbull, facing off with the Red Sox. He also got knocked around in his first start back from Tommy John. A lot of ground balls, though, and a decent number of whiffs. And that's why the Red Sox were below the Blue Jays for me, despite the fact that Turnbull got knocked around. I do think that they are fourth for stacking, probably slightly above the Tigers because the Tigers' offense is struggling. But I would say it goes after the Coors game and after the Blue Jays. I would go Red Sox next, and then I would go with the Tigers after that. Let's finish up with the dinger calls for today. Got to go out to Coors Field. Got to talk about a guy facing Josiah Gray. You can actually get Ryan McMahon at plus 450 to hit a home run for today. I know the weather is weird in Coors, so it's not full Coors, but I find that pretty interesting. So Ryan McMahon, the boring home run call for today. The fun one is the other lefty on the Blue Jays, Brandon Belt. Brandon Belt is, didn't do a whole lot this spring, has not done much as far as making loud contact so far this year, but we got to have some fun. It's hard to call a home run call at Coors Field fun, so we'll go elsewhere. I think that Belt is fun-ish. Not sure if he'll go yard. Don't feel as good about him as I did about Chas McCormick yesterday, but we'll see. So the home run calls for today, Ryan McMahon and Brandon Belt. We'll see how that goes for today. That's all we have for this Thursday slate. Again, lock is at 1:10 p.m. Eastern, so make sure you get your lineup submitted before that time. Get them all neat and tidy, and so you can go win that cash. Do not forget to subscribe to the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts. And if you like what you hear, again, leave us a 5-star rating. We appreciate those of you who have done so already. If you have any questions for me, I am on Twitter at Jim Sannes, JimSannes, especially this time of year where MLB DFS is pretty fresh back in our minds. If you have questions, feel free to fire away. I'm more than happy to answer those over there. We will talk to you once again tomorrow to break down the Friday slate, which hopefully should be a bit more robust. This has been the Solo Shot right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network.